Welcome back to Manicourt, the sprint race in the fourth round of the GP2 series. Remember, race 2 is the top 8 of yesterday's feature race on the grid, but in reverse. British driver Mike Conway sits on pole, hoping for his second race to win in a row. Well, let's get all the action with your commentators, David Croft and Chris Goodwin.
Thank you, Charlie. Good morning. As it was a month ago in the damp conditions in Monaco, Mike Conway from Sevenoaks in Kent has pole position and a real chance of a race victory, but this is not going to be an easy task today. We ride on board with Romain Grosjean down in 19th place on the grid, and you can see he's on the wet tyres, which most have opted for to start the race on the wets. But there's a couple out there, we think, Chris, that are on the slick tyres, and that might be a sensible option if they can get round.
Well, just like yesterday's race was a bit of a lottery with the technical failures that took away the race win for Bruno Senna and for Romain Grosjean as well. Today's lottery is to do with the weather. You can see the track surface, it's not fully wet, but you know, it's a warm day already. It's 20 degrees out there and the track will dry. It doesn't look like it's going to rain again. The wind has picked up and it's blowing in slightly clearer skies. And the guys at the front have not taken the gamble. They've gone for the safer option for the first few laps anyway. Wet weather tyres on board with Andy Zuber. He's on wets, but there are a few drivers up and down the grid that have gone for the slightly more adventurous route. These first few laps on slicks are going to be a nightmare, but it might pay off if they can just keep it going until the track starts to dry.
All things being equal, the track should dry out in about 10 laps or so time, and the actual surface looks a lot wetter, I think, than it is. It's a dark-covered asphalt here. It's a dark-coloured asphalt, and that does make it a bit deceiving on the eye. Mike Conway is settled on the grid. Karun Chandok for iSport, the team leaders, who lead Racing Engineering by 1 point, starts second. Jerome D'Ambrosio third and Andy Zuber fourth. Vitaly Petrov fifth and Pastor Maldonado, Zuber's teammate, starts sixth with Zuber right in front of him. Lucas de Grassi, the runner-up yesterday, starts seventh. Our race winner, Giorgio Pantano, starts eighth. Just to let you know that Bruno Senna down in 23rd. Romain Grosjean will start 19th. Ben Hanley will start 22nd. And we're all, I think, lined up and ready to go here. 28 laps this morning in Manicourt. When the 5 lights go out, we go racing. Engines revving. And away we go. Mike Conway, looked a bit sluggish getting away off the line there, but Karun Chandok equally as slow, and Jerome D'Ambrosio already up into second place. Vitaly Petrov is up into third, and then comes Karun Chandok in fourth. Behind him, Lucas de Grassi. The two PK sports cars got a bad start as well, Zuber and Maldonado, but you can see how tricky it is. Bruno Senna, you just saw a shot there. He's on the slick tyres. He's taken the gamble that it's going to dry up in a few laps' time. But Mike Conway does get away in the lead and down to the Adelaide hairpin, and this under braking is going to be very tricky in these greasy conditions. Grosjean picking his way through the field right at the back, and he's making up places already, up to 14th. Bruno Senna is down in 25th, struggling on those slick tyres. Still Mike Conway leads right up ahead. We ride on board with the home favourite Romain Grosjean, and there he is trying to make another little move on Adrian Valles this time around, going into that hairpin and sliding away is Karun Chandok for iSport. Well, he had a great chance, did Karun Chandok, today to put some mileage between iSport and Racing Engineering in the team championship, and already he's off the track and slips sliding away. Conway leads from D'Ambrosio, Chandok, well, not Chandok, no, Petrov, de Grassi, Zuber and Maldonado. Here we are coming up to Chateau d'Eau. Mike Conway very carefully doing it. You can see how tricky it is. Romain Grosjean has Andy Soucek ahead of him, and Soucek flapping around like that wet fish in front of him, his tail going here, there and everywhere. Down the hill they come towards the final turn, and it's been a great first lap for Romain Grosjean through the final chicane to end the first of 28 laps. Conway, D'Ambrosio, Petrov, de Grassi, Zuber and Maldonado, Pantano, Nunes, and then comes Parent, Soucek, Grosjean, Berman, and then Parent. Adrian Valles now in 13th place. Well, they're all finding it tricky, Chris.
Well, you know, we said before the race, it's not raining, but it is very slippery. Even if you're on wets, Jerome D'Ambrosio is on those wet tyres, perfect tyres for these conditions, but even he is finding it slippery. I can't imagine how difficult it is if you're on the dry weather tyres for these first few laps. The wet weather tired cars are going to be pulling away in these opening laps, if they can stay on the road, that is, and not all of them are. But the drivers on the dry weather tyres could well come good later in the race.
And that's Jerome D'Ambrosio going round the Adelaide hairpin there. He's now behind Karun Chandhok and really struggling, and someone's gone off into the polystyrene hoardings, and that's made it even more tricky. Dodge the debris as they go into the Adelaide hairpin there. We'll hopefully see just what happened. Oh yeah, one of the Durangos, Alberto Valerio. Who else? Another Sunday, another moment for Alberto Valerio. I think this time he got a bit of a nudge off from Kamui Kobayashi off onto the side of the track.
Well, just looking at this, it is very, very slippery out there, and these drivers really are torn between pushing hard, trying to make up ground, and just trying to survive these difficult laps. Here's the start, and you can see Mike Conway on the left gets off the line. Karun Chandhok does not, but it's D'Ambrosio that rockets off from the second row of the grid there. Behind them, jostling for position into turn one, which in the dry is easily flat out off the start. In the wet, certainly isn't. And out of our shot, one or two drivers running wide, particularly on slicks. Very difficult. Down into the Adelaide hairpin, though, off the start. And again, well, further back, Romain Grosjean making up about 3 places in one go.
Yeah, and Karun Chandhok lost places to Vitaly Petrov at the Adelaide hairpin there. You can see the 2 ART cars just going through, the red and white cars. That is Jerome D'Ambrosio, who's now down in 15th place. We're watching a replay of his moment when he went off the track. He's now come into the pits, and he did well there not to go further off into the gravel.
Well, in the pits for a bit of a look over the car, maybe damage incurred going through the gravel like that, but they don't look in a particular hurry to get that car back out, and that looks like that's a terminal retirement for him.
Your race leader, Mike Conway, second place man, Vitaly Petrov, fastest man on the track at the moment, 1 minute 42.6, his last lap time, as he has a little look there on Mike Conway going into turn 8. Conway coming under pressure. These lap times around about 18 seconds or so slower than yesterday's lap times in the dry. That just shows you how tricky it is for the drivers, and we've got yellow flags being waved right at the start of the lap at turn 3 at the moment, so the drivers are going to have to take extra care going around Estoril in a few moments' time. Conway and Petrov and Chateau d'Eau, the 2 PK cars running side by side nearly as well. Zuber ahead of Maldonado. Giorgio Pantano up into the points now in 6th place. Diego Nunes running 7th for DPR. He started 11th, having a good weekend. Diego Nunes, as Petrov just goes a little too wide through the turn 15, the Lycée turn. You see bits of polystyrene on the track from one of the brake boards still all around, and he's out of the race, I'm afraid, Jerome D'Ambrosio. We can maybe see why here. Taking the inside line there. Oh, and he has a little coming together with Karun Chandhok, and that's what's forced his car out. Kamui Kobayashi sets a new fastest lap of the race. Alberto Valerio comes into the pits, and Mike Conway still continues to lead. It's a huge test for Mike Conway today, this.
Well, you know, he had the pole position on the reverse grid race in Monaco, was able to hold on to that lead. Very difficult to overtake in Monaco, so if you're on pole, you're looking good. Here, it's not quite so easy. You know, you've really got to hold on to that place. You've got to show some pace to keep it, and he does look as though he's going to come under a lot of pressure from Petrov at the moment, who does look to have the pace to at least challenge and maybe get by Mike Conway.
Now, Alberto Valerio just saying to his engineers there what's wrong with his car as they have a little look. There is the PK sports car of Maldonado. Andy Zuber ahead of him. Lucas de Grassi up into 3rd place, started 7th. Vitaly Petrov started 5th, he's 2nd. Mike Conway started on pole, he leads as the PK cars swap places at Chateau d'Eau. We're racing here at Manicourt, and so far, Britain's on top. Well, welcome back to Manicourt. That man, Giorgio Pantano, has moved up into the podium places. Ahead of him, Pastor Maldonado. Vitaly Petrov now leads the race on the 7th lap. But it's all changed because the cars have been coming into the pits in the last few moments. We can see here Romain Grosjean, the first of the leading contenders to come in to change tyres. Karun Chandok also into the pits as well to change his tyres. The track is drying out and they're going from wets to slicks. And for some, it isn't working. Romain Grosjean is off into the gravel and has beached that ART car and is out of the race. His teammate Luca Filippi running in tandem with Mike Conway on the track. It's all happening here, but one of the chief beneficiaries, Bruno Senna, now up to 11th place. He started on slick tyres, and we think Jelmer Berman might have done that as well. He's up into 7th place in the Arden car. Those that started on slicks, Chris Goodwin, are looking good for this race.
Well, they are. They've weathered the storm, if you like. They've just tiptoed around these first few laps, got some temperature in the tyres, started to get used to the conditions. It's the drivers that have made the stop mid-race. They've lost ground with the pit stop, but they're also finding it very difficult to get up to speed on their out lap and their first lap. We've seen Romain Grosjean spin off out of the race as a result of that. Very difficult to get up to speed very quickly on slicks mid-race in conditions like this. Pastor Maldonado, it's going to be an adventure for him this next lap as well.
Isn't it just? He's come into the pits, as has Mike Conway, the man who started on pole but started on the wet tyres, and that might just have been the wrong decision. So Mike Conway's been in, Andy Zuba's been in, Diego Nunes and Romain Grosjean. Also Kamui Kobayashi, Karun Chandok you saw, Roldan Rodriguez and Alberto Valerio. We've lost Andy Soucek and we've lost Jerome D'Ambrosio as well. Vitaly Petrov leads this race, and that's what happened to Romain Grosjean. Very balletic, nice bit of a pirouette, but then the beating that followed has ruled him out of this race and has seen him go again to the home favourite, failing to finish in either race in front of his home crowd.
Well, he won't enjoy seeing this one replayed to his home TV audience time and time again. He's a bit annoyed about failing to finish yesterday through technical failure. He'll be even more annoyed because it's down to him today. He's just made a mistake pushing too hard. These conditions are very difficult, but these are the conditions that you discover who really has got it and who hasn't. Under pressure in these conditions, now we're going to see the drivers that started on slicks really come to the fore. Now, difficult to see exactly who's on slicks, but it looks like the Ardennes cars and Parent could certainly be on slicks and benefiting from that. Now, Berman under massive pressure from Parent.
Giorgio Pantano, you can see, comes into the pits now, which means that Jelmer Berman moves up into 2nd place. Vitaly Petrov continues to lead. Jelmer Berman coming under pressure through turn 1 from Alvaro Parent. Behind him, Sebastian Buemi, all on the slick tyres and scrapping away through Estoril. And you can see Giorgio Pantano desperately trying to get some heat into those slick tyres before he gets out onto the racetrack. And it's heat that they need. It's a muggy old day, but I don't think he's got enough even by that.
Well, I can tell you that's not going to warm the tyres up on the pit lane speed limiter, but, you know, a nice gesture.
You try what you can in these sort of conditions. Berman, Parent and Buemi, decent scrap this. 2 Arden cars. And the meat and the sandwich, Parent from Supernova.
Don't forget, Petrov still out there on the circuit, still leading the race by 4 seconds. Well, it was from Giorgio Pantano, who has decided that enough's enough. Got to get onto those dry weather tyres, but Petrov will surely be in the pits any second now because his wet weather tyres will be almost in shreds if he continues.
And there, Marco Asma, new boy to the series, the BMW test driver. Mario Tyson watching on from the pit wall, and he won't like seeing that 360-degree spin as well. Pantano coming under pressure. His teammate Javier Villa up now to 11th place. Mike Conway racing behind him in 12th. Sebastian Buemi has just set a new fastest lap. You can see him just going through shot there and getting past Alvaro Parent at Lisi. Great move from Sebastian Buemi. Jelmer Berman now leads the race because Vitaly Petrov has decided those tyres can't last any longer. He's come in. So Jelmer Berman, who now sets a new fastest lap himself, leads from Buemi, Parent, Bruno Senna, Giorgio Pantano. They're the point scorers. And Petrov out from his pit stop. Now, if it stays dry from here on in, those that started on the slicks will be in a great position. Those that are on the slicks at the moment will all fancy their chances. If it starts raining again, then it gets very interesting, and I'm sure there might just be a few little drops around here. We're hearing from the pits that there's just a few spots of rain in the air, Chris.
Well, if it's just spotting with rain, that's not going to be too much of a problem for the drivers that have got some temperature in their tyres. It's heavy rain, it's lying water on the racetrack that really will ruin the strategy for those that have just stopped.
And look, you can just see the spots of rain there. Yeah, that's your weather forecaster from the DPR team, I think she's from.
Well, actually, she's from Petrov's camp there, as Bruno Senna spinning earlier. He lost a lot of time in the mid-sector. He's back up to speed now. Replay of that, but they've just stopped Petrov just as it starts to rain to put him onto the dry weather tyres. So I think that's why they were looking quite so animated about that. But it's got to rain a bit heavier than that.
Well, I'm told the Petrov camp wanted the driver to stay out as long as he possibly could, didn't want to bring him in, but felt they had to because those tyres were deteriorating, and that's why that lady was a little bit hacked off. She thought he should stay out there, and if it does continue to rain, staying out there would have been an option. Here's Alvaro Parent chasing down Sebastian Buemi down the main straight. Well, there's barely a car's length in it, a couple of cars' lengths as they go around the Grande Courbe into Estoril. And this is where it gets very slippy, as you can see. Parent running wide there, finding grip. So difficult to track down. Just about holds it on the tarmac, accelerating through the Golf Straight, past the golf course on the left-hand side, beyond the stands, into the Adelaide hairpin now. Will Parent have a dive down the inside under braking? No. Thinks against it on this particular occasion. But a good battle this, and while this is happening, Jelmer Berman is now 3 seconds clear and setting fast lap after fastest lap out in front. Riding on board with Andy Zuber, I think this is. Zuber with Ben Hanley just ahead of him. And you can see Ben Hanley just coming into shot there. So he managed to get past him at Chateau d'Eau.
Yeah, the drivers that have gone on to slicks mid-race really are struggling to get up to speed. I think it is very difficult when you're used to a wet weather tyre and the grip it's giving you to suddenly adapt and, adapt whilst actually trying to push hard as well at the same time. Very hard not to overdrive, and a couple of warm-up laps before the start of the race. The formation lap and a tentative start to the race really has worked well for those drivers that started on slicks. Berman, don't forget, he started in 12th. Buemi also way back there. Bruno Senna there in 4th place right now. He started 23rd.
Buemi started 21st in this race as the Campos and the PK Sport of Vitaly Petrov. And behind him, Andy Zuber battle away for 11th and for 12th. So out of the points at the moment. The top 6, those that are scoring points. Jelmer Berman has a 3.2 second lead now from Sebastian Buemi. Alvaro Parent runs in 3rd. Bruno Senna 4th. He's 12 seconds down on the leader. Marco Asma is actually up into 5th place now despite his spin. Luca Filippi in 6th place, on course for his first point of the season. There's 17 laps to go. There's a long way before the checkered flag, and the conditions changing all the time.
Well, this is a great battle going on between these two guys. Parent really desperate to get by and clearly quicker at some points on the racetrack, finding it hard to run too close in the fast corners there, but getting very close in the slow corners, struggling for traction. You can see there's no dry line as such just yet. It's still just fairly uniformly damp, but if things continue at this rate there as Valerio goes past and lets Berman go through, if things continue at this rate and it doesn't rain any heavier, there will be a drying line in some of these corners, and that's when the lap times are going to come down. Yeah,
you can just see that drying line through the Adelaide hairpin there. The lap time is 1:34.7 is the fastest lap so far. Well, at the start of this race, they were lapping 1:45, so we've already come down a fair bit, 12 seconds actually, because Jelmer Berman's new lap, 1:33.624, a new fastest lap of the race as Parent gets past the back marker of Alberto Valerio and can get back on with the job in hand, and that's trying to get past Sebastian Buemi.
Well, these guys really holding themselves up now, allowing Jelmer Berman to pull away, setting fastest lap. These guys battling and trying to get past the back markers at the same time. Meanwhile, in 4th place, Bruno Senna's just lapped nearly 2 seconds a lap faster than the pair we're looking at right now. So this is going to turn into a 3-way battle any minute.
Yep, the back markers just aiding Bruno Senna at the moment, as at the Adelaide hairpin. Parent closes up And I'd suggest that Sebastian Buemi was the tidier man through the line there, and Romain Grosjean watches on from the pit wall, his teammates in the points, but in both races here, he's out of them. Not done his championship aspirations any good coming to his home track this weekend.
Well, 16 laps remaining. Great for the race to unfold, but just looking at a couple of these camera lenses, the heli camera and the camera we just looked at there, some spots of rain on those lenses, and quite often you find in these conditions when it's marginal, you get a bit of rain on one part of the racetrack and not at all on the other. Invariably, it's the pits that stay dry where the decision makers are standing.
Andy Zuber down in 13th place. Oh dear, manages to get past Petrov, who slows down through the chicane there. Ben Hanley was involved with that as well, and he did ever so well, Zuber, to react in time and keep his car on a decent line. That could have been absolute carnage for all three of them.
Well, I'm not entirely sure why those two guys slowed so much, but Zuber, quick reactions, flying past the two of them in one go. As you say, he did well to hang on to that.
Yeah, Javier Veer and Ben Hanley. Well, Hanley's got ahead of Javier Veer in the Campos there, and Andy Zuber, well, exceptional skill there. Maybe we'll see it from a different angle in a bit. Yeah, we will. It's one of the back markers, the DPR of Michael Herc getting in the way. Zuber taking advantage. Oh dear, wasn't much room, was there?
Not really. Good job those run-off areas are not grass, otherwise he'd have been out of the race. But straight line in the chicane, carrying on, and well, Zuber up into 12th place, but the race hasn't gone his way. You know, this is one of those situations where experience on the pit wall, confidence from the driver really leads to you making the wrong or the right call. And I have to say, the drivers in the top four will be quite grateful for, I think, having made the right decision at the start of this race. Not an easy one. Yeah, brave decision to go on to slicks, but certainly Berman, Buemi and Senna particularly at the back of the grid there didn't have that much to lose and a lot to gain.
Oh dear, there's an awful lot to lose for Giorgio Pantano as he careers right into the side pod there of the Campos car of Vitaly Petrov. Now, how much damage has that done to either Petrov or Pantano? But he gave it a right old clout, and you can see just in the back of your shot there, Pantano going off onto the runoff area through that chicane. Let's have a look from a different angle. The Adelaide hairpin on Petrov rather comes across the racing engineering car. And well, if he'd have tried to get out of the way, Pantano, he'd have been on the grass himself. Kobayashi right behind takes full advantage and skips through past the pair of them.
Look at Giorgio's steering wheel. He's incurred a fair bit of suspension damage there, and that car not really driving very well in a straight line, certainly not wanting to take the chicane. So championship leaders looking likely to come out of this race, looking certain not to score anything this afternoon.
He'll still keep his championship lead though. He started 9 points clear of Bruno Senna, did Giorgio Pantano, in his 101st GP2 or Formula 3000 race, and they'll still be the leader when we go to Silverstone in a fortnight's time for the British Grand Prix weekend, which is a sellout on race day. Still a few tickets left for qualifying and for Friday as Pantano comes into the pits, and that'll be him out of the race.
Well, he did better than expected yesterday in the race, winning that one when the lead two pulled out of the way for him conveniently, and well, he's doing worse than expected today in this race. So, you know, it's a game of snakes and ladders really, this motor racing. 1 minute it's going for you, and certainly now for Giorgio Pantano it's going against him.
And it's not going very well indeed for that man, Alvaro Parent, who was battling for third place, but he's lost a lot of ground to Sebastian Buemi by going off at Lisi there, and you can see the difference that has made to the gap. Buemi now well ahead of Parent, and we'll see what happened down the bottom of the hill. Just got his braking too late, came right up close to Sebastian Buemi and couldn't stay on the track, had to use the runoff area, and he's lost a couple of seconds.
You can just see there a shot that there is a drying line appearing there.
Well, how on earth did Luca Filippi manage to avoid Mike Conway there, and how did Mike Conway thread his way through? That's Alberto Valerio going off again and again. It's just a repeat every Sunday for that man at the moment. Back onto the track, try your luck again, Alberto, but Mike Conway managing to stay pretty much intact as he threaded his way through, and that's a battle for 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th down there at the moment. Luca Filippi up into 6th, I should say now. Mike Conway down to 8th on our timing screens. Marco Asma coming under pressure on his debut in this series. As we ride on board with Andy Zuber in the PK Sports car down towards the Adelaide hairpin. Zuber at the moment riding in 12th place, full 46 seconds behind your leader, Jelmer Berman.
Well, you know, he might also, if you look at his steering wheel, his steering not too straight, so it doesn't take a great deal of contact to put your steering, your suspension alignment out of place. It makes life very difficult, particularly as the track dries up. When you're on slick tyres, you do need that to be fairly perfect, and Andy Zuber's suspension and steering geometry far from perfect, so he's going to struggle to make up too much ground there from where he is now, and he has had more than one incident of contact in this race.
As we watch the battle for the minor placings, your leader, Jelmer Berman, after 16 laps, has a 5-second advantage over Sebastian Buemi. Alvaro Parent further 3 seconds back on the Arden car. Bruno Senna now 6 seconds down on third place. He's 14 seconds down on the leader, but lapping at the moment about a second and a half faster than Jelmer Berman. Back markers really coming into play here. Behind Bruno Senna, Luca Filippi and Lucas Di Grassi, they're the point scorers at the moment. Mike Conway just 1.3 seconds off a point and 6th place.
This, again, the Sunday race, always very important for the championship contenders to make sure they come away with something out of it. Reverse grid, always very difficult. Obviously, some of our main championship contenders didn't only start the race at the back end of the top 8, as usual. They were at the back end of the grid entirely. So looking down there, you know, someone like Bruno Senna does need to come away with some points from this one, particularly when Giorgio Pantano is going to score nothing at all. So what proved what was looking like a disaster yesterday, a great gain for Pantano, not quite so much at the end of the Sunday, hopefully.
Well, let's hear what he's got to say. He's down in the pits with Charlie.
Giorgio, very difficult conditions out there. We saw you went into Petrov and you probably had some suspension damage.
Yeah, I have the suspension damage and there's nothing we can do. Unfortunately, I have also the radio was not working with my team. And as well, and I wasn't in contact with them to make a decision when to come in. I just see too late probably for come in and put the slick on. But anyways, this is, you never know what's happened in this condition.
Thanks, Giorgio.
Well, some you win, some you lose. He'll be back again at Silverstone. Just saw Bruno Senna going through your shot, and there's Alberto Valerio limping in to the Adelaide hairpin. He's been lapped, this man hasn't. Luca Filippi on course for his first points of the season. Behind him, Lucas Di Grassi. Behind Di Grassi, Mike Conway. Right at the end of that little threesome of cars. Behind him, Marco Asma, who's been losing places on a regular basis for the last few laps. Roland Rodriguez is now into the pits. His teammates at Fisichella Motorsports, who've not had the best of weekends. Didn't they pick up a €10,000 fine for a little altercation in the pits during qualifying? Some of the Supernova and FMS staff getting a little overheated, the team principals being involved as well.
I think tempers did get a little bit afraid. It's quite a narrow pit lane here. One of the reasons why Formula One guys are saying they're not coming back here in the future. Yeah, no need for that, really. No need for fisticuffs in the pit lane.
More reminiscent to ice hockey than it was to motorsport down there, but both teams have been ticked off and FMS have been fine. And Andy Zuber now at Chateau d'Eau says, Javier Villa, you've left too much of a space, I'll have some of that. And he moves up into 11th place. In fact, in between Javier Villa and Andy Zuber, Kamui Kobayashi getting in on the act as well. Our first sprint race winner of the season back in Spain, seems like an age ago. We were at Barcelona, the season moving onwards at a pace now. You just see what happened. Villa left the door open, through pops Andy Zuber, and Kamui Kobayashi wasn't about to hang around either and wait to be invited past. He nipped through.
Don't forget this race, the reverse grid Sunday race. Points only go down to 6th place on this one, and well, this is the battle for that last point, more or less. Mike Conway, don't forget, he was on pole position at the start of the race. He's down there in 7th place, so it's Lucas Di Grassi that's taking that last point at the moment. Mike will be pretty keen to try to do something about that, but the gap looking like it's opening up rather than anything. And Lucas Di Grassi, well, if anything, he's going to be challenging Luca Filippi.
Giancarlo Fisichella watching on. He's got a race this afternoon to worry about, and down the pit straight, Alvaro Parent's in trouble. And Bruno Senna pops himself up into the podium places. Not bad for a man who started 23rd. He now is 3rd. And whatever happened to Perrin, seems like he's fixed it. And he's back in the race again.
That was just a spin, I think, bouncing over those curbs in the chicane. Nice and slippery, the curbs on a day like today. They're the last part of the racetrack to properly dry off. And I think he just bounced his way through that final chicane. He had just set a fastest lap of the race, which has subsequently been beaten, but bouncing over the curbs, the car's landed a bit unsettled. He's tried to get on the power, but he's just lost control of the rear end, and when these cars spin, they take a little while to fumble back and get back into first gear. It's cost him dearly.
Andy Zuber up into 10th place, past Ben Hanley in the Durango, and finding that corner at the bottom of the hill, a place to overtake once again. Fastest lap of the race currently being held by Vitaly Petrov, which is no good to the leading 10. Petrov running in 14th, and he won't score a point for that. So I think Sebastian Buemi still holds on to the point for the fastest lap. He set the fastest lap previous to Petrov's best ever of 1:25.3.
Well, I think Buemi wants to win this one, doesn't he? He's pushing really hard. He's a second a lap faster than Berman, who really is struggling for pace right now. He's struggling not only relative to Buemi, but the rest of the top 6 all lapping faster than him at the moment.
2 Arden teammates. And I think the lead's going to change hands as we go round Estoril. On the inside line, Buemi. On the outside, Berman. Berman just holds on for the moment. But will there be a chance into the Adelaide hairpin? You can see how the track is drying out on that racing line. Great shot from the helicopter that's keeping pace with these 2 GP2 cars. About 150 or so miles an hour down that back straight into the hairpin. Still Jelmer Berman out in front from Sebastian Buemi, Bruno Senna and Alvaro Perrent. In fact, Perrent has got ahead of Senna once again. Goes around the outside there, Bruno.
That looks like he's got problems again. The way the car was downshifting, he's looking down into the cockpit. That's not a healthy GP2 car. He's got gearbox problems, gear shift trouble again, I'm sure.
Second race in a row. Questions will be asked there. In and out of the iSport garage, I'm sure. Over at Arden, they're celebrating a 1-2 at the moment. Here we can see how Perrent got past Bruno Senna. Too easy, wasn't it?
Just not changing gear. That's just... well, I don't know if there's a warranty issued with these GP2 cars, but there should be.
I don't think you get a year's guarantee, do you? Clattering the curves. The 2 Arden cars complete another lap. We've got 7 to go. Jelmer Berman has a 0.3 of a second advantage, but it's all about car lengths. They're that close together at the moment. Alvaro Perrent back up into 3rd from Bruno Senna, and there he goes. Buemi past Jelmer Berman. Oh, it's wheel to wheel. Being forced off onto the curbs, Jelmer Berman. He's hanging on in there, trying to regain his lead. Side by side, down the back straight. This is fantastic racing into the Adelaide hairpin. Who's going to emerge out in front? It's car number 14, Sebastian Buemi. That is excellent racing.
Well, almost inevitable with 7 laps to go. It was going to happen. Pace of Buemi so superior to Berman, but it's difficult when there's a dry line emerging. You can't really easily overtake, because to do so you have to get onto the more slippery part of the racetrack, but he's managed to do it, wheel-to-wheel stuff there, and I'm sure now Buemi's going to get his head down, open up a small amount of breathing space, and Berman will do well just to hang on in there in 2nd place, to be honest.
I thought the Swiss were meant to be neutral, but the Swiss driver there in full attack mode. And a nod of approval and a shake of the head. I wonder which race engineer is who.
I think the one shaking his head might be the one that's just lost a position. What do you think?
Just a touch. See the grey skies in the back there as Jelmer Berman and Sebastian Buemi come through the final chicane. Sebastian Buemi starting this lap as a new race leader and on his way to a race victory in GP2. His first race victory in GP2 would be for either man. Alvaro Perrent back on the podium again at the moment, and he's 4.5 seconds clear of Bruno Senna, who's hanging on in there, but not lapping anywhere nearly as quickly as Perrent. And the man behind him, Luca Filippi, by the way, just set a new fastest lap of the race, nearly 1.5 seconds faster than Bruno Senna, and he's only 6 seconds back.
Some of these technical problems a lot of the cars had yesterday, it was hydraulics that put paid to Romain Grosjean. Well, I'm not too sure. They're looking at the back end of that car, obviously, as well. But these problems don't necessarily turn out to be terminal. They can be, it can lead to a fairly slow and prolonged death. but it could well be. Looking at the gear shifting there, they're touching the gear pedals. I would put money on Nunes having hydraulic problems and gear shift trouble with that car as well.
He's out of the race, ending in disappointment this weekend for Diego Nunes. It's a shame for him because DPR and Nunes having a much better fist of things here at Manicourt than in the first 3 rounds of the season. There's your leader, Sebastian Buemi, and he's just set a new fastest lap as he completes lap 23, and now motoring well clear of his teammate Jelmer Berman. Looks very comfortable now, Buemi, now he's out in front. Alvaro Parent comes through, goes a little bit wide onto the AstroTurf. That's not really where you want to be. That will still be very damp on the green stuff. And there's Bruno Senna coming through in 4th place. Behind him, you can see Luca Filippi is catching. That gap that was almost 6 seconds is now down under 4 seconds between Senna and Filippi. Lucas de Grassi in 6th place, and he's nearly, well, he's exactly 10 seconds clear of Mike Conway, who started in pole, but looks like he's going to miss out, as did that man, Karun Chandok. I'll be back to Brackley and back to the drawing board for the iSport driver.
Well, the 2 front row starters haven't really done too well here today. It really was a case of the conditions making it a bit of a lottery, but giving an opportunity for the teams and the drivers to shine. And I think the guys that started on slicks were brave, but they made the right call, and they managed the conditions. If they're still in the race now, they did anyway. 1 or 2 didn't. But it's certainly been a difficult race just to survive, just to stay on the racetrack, and to show your pace as well. It's quite a difficult tightrope to walk. Push too hard and you're looking at a bit of a zero. Push exactly the right amount and you're a bit of a hero. And at the moment, Sebastian Buemi has actually, in these conditions, managed to show that he's a decent racing driver. That car has struggled, or he has struggled, for pace in the dry conditions. In the drying conditions, he's done a good job today.
I'll tell you one man, Chris, who's going to be enjoying this weekend. That'll be Christian Horner, Red Bull team principal, also looks after the Arden team as well. As is that Alvaro Parent going very slowly indeed for Supernova.
Yes, it is.
He's going backwards out of the podium places. Bruno Senna pops up a place. Luca Filippi pops up a place as well. Lucas de Grassi will be popping up a place. There he goes in the Campos car. Mike Conway will think that there's a chance of a point on here because Parent going very slowly indeed down the back straight.
Well, I suspect there might be a bit of a technical debrief after this weekend in the GP2 organisation, because there are 1 or 2 cars, 1 or 2 prominent cars not finishing races at the moment, and that's no good. You know, Alvaro Parent has done a good job. 1 quick spin, but he was running in 3rd place. Great job for him, and well, he's retiring, and it shouldn't really be.
Absolutely not. Just going about half the speed of everybody else at the moment, Alvaro Parent. And who's that behind him, having a little trip off into the gravel? Looks like Vitaly Petrov to me. It is Vitaly Petrov, who was running down in 13th place and has maybe lost a couple more places. And that's Ben Hanley in the Durango, who was running, well, with Petrov down in 13th, 14th. He's beached that Durango. So back in the series with a new team. Just limping. I don't know if that was the gravel causing him to limp a little bit, or maybe he's hurt himself, but it's a long trudge, isn't it? Back to the pits from there.
It's hard to look gracious when you've just beached your car on the gravel, to be honest. So, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with him. Certainly nothing that, you know, good strong cup of tea and a bit of a sit-down work won't sort out. He won't be very happy with that. The car wasn't massively competitive, and I think Bruno Senna has lost that place now to Luca Filippi. Filippi has had the pace. I'm sure that Senna's car again nursing a problem. We saw him suddenly lose pace, and he's been continuing to do that for the last half a dozen laps or so. Here it is, Filippi just getting the acceleration out of that corner, and again, as yesterday, in fact, Bruno struggling for pace and on the straight. And well, again, as I said, I'm sure there will be a technical debrief after this race weekend, because technical problems, you know, hitting so many cars, it's a bit unusual, to say the least.
Especially when every car is absolutely identical. Maybe make it a bit more sturdy rather than streamlined, as it were. Mike Conway now up into 6th place. Alvaro Parent continues to go backwards. He's running, well, down in 14th and into the pits now. So Mike Conway up into 6th and will score points if he holds on to that 6th place. Now, behind Bruno Senna is Lucas de Grassi, and what was a major problem could be getting even worse for the young Brazilian driver here, because de Grassi is stalking him down the main straight, still under yellow flags, so as they go round Estoril, de Grassi can't get past here, and they just have to watch out because of Ben Hanley's car beached in the gravel. They're towing it away, but the yellow flag's still out. Now, though, de Grassi can get his foot down. The flags are waved green, and they're under racing conditions once again, and I would imagine by the time they get to the Adelaide hairpin there, yeah, there you go. Lucas de Grassi passes with ease, and that's one of the more straightforward overtaking manoeuvres he'll have this weekend.
Well, just a sitting duck, basically. Bruno's car not working in a straight line. It's just not accelerating up through the gears correctly. Not much you can do about that. You can go as fast as you like around the corners, and he's on the pace there. But again, that's pretty frustrating, because a podium position from 23rd on the grid would have been awesome and would have helped his championship recover from a pretty big hit yesterday. Still second in the championship, and he will be at the end of this race.
Yeah, he's 10 seconds clear of Mike Conway at the moment, and we're on the last lap. So the last lap for this man, Sebastian Buemi. His teammate, Jelmer Berman, 5.5 seconds further back. Arden, a 1-2 on the cards here. Does this bode well for Red Bull in the Formula 1 Grand Prix this afternoon? Christian Horner, as I said, will be celebrating. He's got 2 of his drivers, both Mark Webber and David Coulthard, in the top 10 for this afternoon's race, which you can see on ITV1, of course. So it could be Red Bulls all round, and maybe a drop of champagne to go with it as well. As Buemi motors down the straight towards the second of the hairpins, and on his way to his first victory in GP2 racing. Might only be a sprint race, but he'll stand on top of the podium and will cherish this moment for the rest of his life, I'm sure. That move to go onto slick tyres at the start of the race has paid handsomely for Buemi and for Berman.
Well, 21st to first, it doesn't come easy, even if you have just made the right choice of tyres. He's earned it. He's had to drive very carefully with his head, push when he needed to, be careful when he needed to, and well, he can certainly be careful now. He can just cruise to the finish. If he cut the engine now, he'd still make it across the line.
Well, he is going downhill, but uphill in the standings. There you are, 2 more corners. 1, 2, checkered flag. Thank you very much. Sebastian Buemi wins here in Manicourt. Across the line behind him, that's a back marker. There's his teammate, a 1 and 2 for Arden. Great day for them as they take a maximum haul of points from this sprint race. But who is going to finish third? Felipe de Grassi battling all the way to the line here. There's Luca Filippi on his way to his first points of the season, first podium as well. How about that? He comes home third. Lucas de Grassi comes home fourth. Behind him, Bruno Senna started 23rd, finishes 5th. If you'd have offered him that at the start of the race, he'd have taken it. Mike Conway started on pole. Unfortunately for him, 6th place is the best he can manage, but at least he scores a point. That's the top 6, won by a 1-2 for Arden. Sebastian Buemi and Jelmer Berman will be back for the podium in a moment.
Thank you. Pour moi? Merci.
Voilà, podium dans un instant avec la Suisse gagnante grâce à s2008 qui est sur la droite de votre écran et qui va arriver sur ce podium, mesdames et messieurs, GP2 course 2 et le vainqueur. Voilà, nous rejoint, très jolie victoire, un petit victoire de toute façon belle, celle de Sébastien.
Great moment to join us, the Swiss national anthem for our winner, Sebastian Buemi. A first race win in GP2 for Sebastian Buemi, his teammate Jelmer Berman on the podium for the first time as well. Luca Filippi making it the 1, 2, 3, all of whom, Chris, started on slick tyres.
Well, they were the brave ones. They were the ones that made that tricky call at the start of the race. Easier the further you are back on the grid to make a bit of a gamble. I think if you're on the front row of the grid, it was a tough one, really. I think it was always going to be a drying race. It wasn't raining at the start. It's quite warm here, and, well, here's the proof.
Absolutely. The championship now sees Giorgio Pantano on 35 points, leading from Bruno Senna on 28 points. No points again for Romain Grosjean in front of his home fans. He loses out to now Sebastian Buemi, who moves third in the drivers' standings. Mike